Russell, no throw, what a catch by Elliott, first down, touchdown! With time and downfield, and that ball is intercepted by Woods. Xavier Woods now on the return, staying in and bringing it out just beyond the 40.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Second down and goal. Prescott. Gallup. Touchdown, what a catch!
Here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. It's a Thursday, and it's gorgeous in Central Texas. Not sure where you might be, but if you'd like, we'd love for you to either tweet at us or text us, or even if you're on the SicEm365 chat room, let us know where you're listening from, whether it's on the West Coast or in the Midwest or even the East Coast or somewhere in the South or somewhere in this great state of Texas. So earlier today, Jalen Green is going to jump from wherever he's been, I guess he's a high school player, and leap into the new NBA Professional Pathway Program, the G League, that pays elite prospects $500,000 plus and provide a one-year development program outside of minor league's traditional team structures. Is this the NBA and Adam Silver saying, hey, NCAA, too bad?
No, I think it's dealing with the reality of a situation. I mean, you watch the movie The Scheme. That wouldn't need to exist if these things were in place. We need to get away from a place where guys are going to college just because it's an arbitrary rule.
If that's the case, why is Bob Bowlesby yesterday and all the college football committee saying that we have to protect what is a student athlete and we can't go play sports until our students are on campus? Not because of safety reasons.
That's two different issues. These are two
but
different issues.
He says we want to protect the student athlete, the amateur, student athlete.
Yeah, but you're talking about two different things. The first thing is these guys are going to take their money and go play professional basketball, and the other thing is waiting until we're clear from a virus to put people back in dorm rooms.
That's not what he said, though. What Bowlesby was talking about is that we need to protect what we're on campus to do, and that's to be a student.
Yeah, well, they're not doing a good job of it now, and they're not being very, very realistic about it now. So why not just let these kids go pro and not cut the BS of them saying, well, I'm going to go to college and take a bunch of stupid halfway classes so they fulfill some silly requirement.
Yeah, I think it's just another domino to fall for the G League and for the NBA. This is not the first player. It's just one of the more high-profile guys. There's been some other high-profile guys, but he's a top high school recruit. And right now, given this situation, are you going to go onto a campus and sit there and not know if you're going to have a season, but just sit and take classes online until you get word that, oh, no, you are going to actually be able to practice with this school that you decided to come to? And this is way better than, if you decided to just go play basketball right now and make money immediately. I think it's a very easy decision unless you're somebody who's just so drawn to education. And basketball is unique in this way. They're the only ones that have proven that they can jump from high school to the NBA. So this whole rule put in place of you have to stay at least, they're basically just forcing them to have to stay in college, even though many of them don't want to. So now they have an option. That's not the draft any longer. It's, hey, I got to go G League, and then I got to go do the draft. But they're making money, and they're not playing student like basketball players became known to do more often than not. And, especially given the microscope that's been placed on college basketball and all of the issues we're facing in this country right now, I think we're probably going to see a lot more basketball players do this. And I think we're going to see more of this just based on the players who had already done this same type of announcement. This was already heading in this direction pre-COVID-19. So
Stuart Mandel said this is what college sports leaders have wanted for some time. Stop blaming us that they can't become professionals. Ralph Russo, another national writer, now we just need something like this for football, but the NFL has zero motivation to spend a dime on player development that's already happening for free at the college level.
Well, and football is a little bit different because there is you can get by in the NBA not being at your full developmental, strong. Basketball, I'm not saying you're less of an athlete, but with football, you don't want an 18-year-old kid out there with 26-year-old men. You just don't.
How old? 18?
18.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. You don't want an 18-year-old kid to walk out there, and very few 18-year-old kids are at their football physical peak. You know, that the elite ones are that they're NFL players. It's a different animal because it's a different sport. I get his point, but with basketball, it's stopping the charade, and it's going to make it impossible for a lot of these the coaches like Will Wade who are on the phone, you know, saying, hey, I made him this offer, they made him this offer. The players that don't want to play college will leave, and it will make college basketball better because the people who are there want to be there. They'll stay, and you'll see more teams like we had in the 80s and 90s that are guys that play 3 and 4 years together.
The chat room is brought to you by the Willis Law Firm. Baylor Chuck, I'm listening from Gainesville, Georgia.
Very nice. Home of AJ Styles.
Really?
Yes.
The text line brought to you by Riverbend Liquor and Wine as they keep rolling along. By the way, they have options if you like Balcones, craft beer. 254-339-1122 is the number for the text line. And also you can either be on Twitter with @Paul Catalina, @Craig Smoak, @David Smoak, and @SicEm365 Radio. Our lineup today, and I got a couple of NFL notes, guys. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. The start of the lineup at 3:30 today, Jackie Sherrill, who now is a studio analyst, I believe, for Fox Sports, longtime college football coach, including at Texas A&M, Pittsburgh, Mississippi State. Today at 4 o'clock, Randy Galloway. That'll be fun. Jason King from 365, SicEm365, will join us at 3:45 on his Q&A with former running back Shock Linwood. And that brings me to this. I'm about to put the poll up on Twitter, and you can answer this on the chat room or text line, 254-339-1122. Who would be your all-decade Baylor running back if you just picked one? Would it be Lake Seastrunk, Jared Salubi, Glasgow Martin? Would it be Terrence Ganaway? Would it be Shock Linwood? We voted for an all-decade team. We're going to release that sometime. I guess we voted about a week ago. Maybe even later. We'll release that sometime, I think, next week.
Yeah, a lot of good options there, and maybe a bit of a harder decision than you would think it would be. I know for a lot of people that I see, and I do hope that with our all-decade team, when that is unveiled next week, we don't go the route that I've already seen, you know, with some of these all-decade teams of there's 3 first-team running backs, 2 first-team quarterbacks, there's 4 receivers, there's 6 linemen, there's 3 tight ends. It's just like it's 11 players. It's 11 versus 11. I don't like the co's in Player of the Year awards and how the Big 12's very guilty of having like 6 offensive linemen on a first team. I can't stand that. It should be 11 guys and maybe a tie here and there. But, you got to pick one running back. It's not 2 or 3. It's not 3 of tight ends. It's 1. And, Lake was the most explosive. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But was he the most consistently good? Was he the best one? I think you can make an argument that, no, Shock Linwood might have been more of an all-consistent runner. You can make a argument for Glasgow or Terrence or any of the others that are options as well. So I don't think it's very clear-cut, whereas I think quarterback, yes, Seth and Bryce were very, very good. But Robert Griffin III won a Heisman Trophy. I mean, bottom freaking line right there. Mm-hmm. Offensive line, I think it's actually pretty clear-cut other than maybe a spot here or there, but you're going to have Spencer Drango. You're going to have Cyril Richardson. You're going to have kind of 3 or 4 of the same guys. Receivers, I can see where people get, a little bit of an argument going there for like the 3rd spot. But running back, I think, you can make a little bit of an argument and reason as to why some guy might be a better fit in an all-decade style team than the obvious choice.
Yeah,
okay.
And I liked what they did in that they did that with 1, and they had guard and tackle and not 5 offensive linemen.
Yeah, because you see
a lot of time teams are 5. It's 5 left tackles.
Right,
well,
exactly.
Okay. Well, you can't. Most of those guys at left tackle can't play center. So how you can't really run the team that way. For my personal voting, I'll just say most of the offensive guys came from the earlier part of the decade, and most of the defensive guys, save a couple, came from the later part of the decade just because the Matt Rule era teams had better defensive players.
Yeah, I think it was pretty clear there, and I think that defensive team would have been even more littered had he stuck around for another year or two because of Terrell Bernard. I mean, as good as he was, and I know you had a lot of pull for putting him on the team, I hesitated because of, Hager and Lackey and guys like that. But if I got to vote after next year, Terrell Bernard might be a pretty easy selection for me to make. I don't know.
Yeah, it's fun because it was easier for me to remember the offensive players because for so many years during this decade, or I guess last decade, that was so much more prevalent. But it didn't take me long. I had a couple that I'm going to add instead of. I'm trying to do this right, but Jay Finley played. His last year was 2010,
so he counts.
So he has to count, even though, and he had like 1,200 yards that year or whatever it was, 1,000 yards that year. So I'm gonna leave him up in that poll. It's gonna be Terrence Ganaway, Lake Seastrunk, Jay Finley, and Shock Linwood. And we'll have Jason King on. He spoke with Shock Linwood yesterday. He'll join us tomorrow. Today at 3:45. Okay. The NFL is going to release their 2020 regular season schedule, they say no matter what, on May the 9th. The full season. Cowboys apparently will open up against the Rams at the new stadium. Is that the new stadium? Is it they already played there? No, that's its new stadium against the Rams.
That's good. That's
not
that'll be
the
fun.
Giants, thank God, somewhere.
It's been forever. And I think the Cowboys opening up in L.A. has a lot to do with the fact that the only reason there's football in Los Angeles is Jerry Jones.
Okay.
I say he's the only reason. He's the guiding force of bringing it back there. Putting the Cowboys in training camp there again, showed that there was interest for the NFL, even if it was his own team, and that there were at least Rams fans that missed their team from when it left. Brought it back. We'll see how it goes. I think it'll be better in the new stadium. I don't think it will be for the Chargers because their fans are all still, about 100 miles south.
Okay.
Yeah, they need fans in the stadium, and they're not getting Rams fans in the stadium. They might for that first game just because of the new venue that people want to check out, and that'll be the to-do in Hollywood that day. But I don't know too many people who care about Rams football, even those who live in Los Angeles. So how is he going to make it a big affair outside of the stadium unveiling than having the most popular team in the league come in? So it makes a lot of sense. I was sick and tired of Cowboys-Giants to start off the year every single season. I just did not see the appeal past a certain point with that rivalry. I know the history, but it's just bland when you open up with the same game every single year. So I like the change. I mean, on paper right now, I'd pick that to be a Cowboys win, quite frankly. But that should be cool to see that new venue and see if the Rams can't get a little bit of their own fan base to come out of the woodwork as well.
Yeah, the Rams are in a bit of I want to call it a rebuild, but maybe like a soft reboot of what they're doing right now.
They swung big for the Super Bowl,
yeah,
missed, and now they're having to deal with the contractual situations that they put themselves into.
Also, a response on this at 254-339-1122 or on the chat room. Caesars has released their odds on what teams and how many wins they have. The Patriots are now 8.5, the lowest since 2003.
And they're probably giving Bill Belichick 2 wins just because he's Bill Belichick.
Exactly. Most likely. Tampa Bay, 9. Have not been in the playoffs since 2007. Cowboys, 9.5. That'll drive people right straight to it. Oh, they'll be 10-6 because that's right in their wheelhouse. Philadelphia, 9.5. Texans, 7.5. Giants, 5.5. Redskins, 4.5, which means, yet again, the division looks like trash.
Yeah.
Let's see. Browns, 8.5. Still kind of like the Browns a year later. Kansas City, where are they at? They had like 12. That's pretty high. I would go against that. Ravens and Kansas City at 12. I would bet against that. I know 12-4 is a good, solid, perfect type, but that's a lot. You never know. One thing can happen.
Oh, I would take the under at 12 all the time, just because you don't know what's going to happen, and there's always a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover in places, especially a place like Kansas City that never had one. I'm going to say I'm going to equate it to New Orleans and Philadelphia. Both had a little bit of one. I mean, and Philadelphia probably was okay until the end of the season, but even still, there's a little bit when you have that first one. It's like a 15-year-old kid with his first beer at a party.
Can't handle it.
Can't handle it.
So here's an interesting note about 12, which I thought is a staggering number. I mean, even back in the 90s when the Cowboys and 49ers were good, and it's a huge number. Kansas City and Baltimore, prohibitive favorites. And it's the second time in the past 30 years where two teams had a preseason win total of at least 12. Green Bay in 2012, the Patriots with 12. They finished with 12. The Patriots, the Packers went 11-5. So neither team actually went over. That's a huge number.
Well, to get 13 wins in today's NFL, I think is really, really hard to do, especially if you're in a division that 10 games would, like if you're the Patriots and you get to 12 and 10 would win it in most years, there is impetus to maybe let some guys rest a little bit longer. So you might drop a game late because you're sitting down some linebackers or something like that. But 13 is a really hard number to get to. You have to be, well, the Cowboys did it a couple years ago. It was just one of those things that they also won a couple games late that they probably wouldn't have normally won in a situation just because they said, what the hell, let's go for it.
Well, I mean, on the one hand, that's a number you've got to put out there to get people to bet, because if you put 11 wins, I think everybody's going to say, yeah, easily the Chiefs and the Ravens are going to get 11 wins. And to force those folks to get a little frisky and want to put some money on the line on a question that's a little bit more difficult, you bump it up by a win to 12, that elusive 12-4. But, I mean, last year, Patriots were 12-4, Ravens were 14-2, so, they easily did it last year. You had the Chiefs at 12-4, so do you think they're as good as they were last year in the regular season? I'd say most people probably do. So do you think they hit that same mark? That's what's enticing about it. Packers were 13-3. The Saints were 13-3. The 49ers were 13-3. So, yeah, I mean, that's about the 12-13 areas where you see the separation, but there was more than a handful that got to that mark last year.
Already we have 34 votes on who would get your vote as the best running back at Baylor in the 2010 to 2019 time period. 38.2% Shock, 35.3% Lake Seastrunk, 14.7% Terrence Ganaway, and Jay Finley, 11.8%.
Jay Finley's checking Twitter. It's like, come on, man. Jeez, dude.
And that
Finley only had a year, but he's still.
Really was. I didn't realize it automatically updates on my screen so we can keep up with that without me having to refresh it.
I wonder with Lake Seastrunk how many people just remember him being faster than everybody when they think about his career versus when you think of Shock. I think of the TCU game where the O-line was just plowing frogs over, and he was running so hard, down by 2 touchdowns and running the ball with time running. I mean, that's how effective it was. But
will there be a backlash to Shock because of the way his career ended in 2016?
I would think that would be, to me, the only reason you don't vote for the all-time leading rusher at Baylor, by far at Baylor, Shock Linwood, is because you're mad that he ended on such a sour note.
Yeah, and I don't know how many people are really mad at him, though. You know what I mean? I think that was just such a frustrating time period with everything that was going on and for everybody. Did he handle it very well? No, he absolutely did not. He was one of those that had major problems with the changing coaching staff. I think, though, if you know Shock a little bit and you realize that he's kind of your typical old East Texas guy, you know what I mean? And maybe not the most trusting person in the world, and that was one thing about a lot of those players under Browse was that they developed such close relationships with those guys and were their father figures in many ways, right? And kind of understood them on a wavelength that maybe not everybody would. And so to lose that, especially heading into your final year, I just think it was devastating for guys. And, Shock might have just been one that took it particularly hard or harder than others and didn't know how to really react or act on it. But I will say, excuse me, when we saw him last year at the tailgate, he seemed to be in really good spirits. And, if some people hold that against him, that's fine. But, I think it's better to be kind of wary of that whole time period, when taking into consideration somebody's emotions or the way they were acting at that time, because we really don't know walking in their shoes what that would have been like.
So that's up on Twitter. I just tagged all your names on Twitter. Everybody at SicEm365. What a family. Colt Barber, Grayson Grunhafer, Jason King, who will join us today at 3:45. Sam Bradshaw. Wow. He put up some dandy stuff today about
maybe talk about
State finished lower than their top 25 ranking at the start of the year. Number 6, Michigan. Number 5, Notre Dame. Number 4, Florida State.
Oh, yeah. The last part of this decade has not been good.
Number 3, West Virginia. 89% of the time they've been, at the end of the year, lower than their preseason top 25. Number 2, no-brainer, and last year was a joke the way they got all the love. Number 2, Nebraska. 91, so 9 out of every 10 times, if they even had 10 top. And A&M 100% of the time. That means every time they were ranked in the AP Top 25 preseason poll, every single time they finished below. Could that have been the case in 2012 with Manziel?
I don't think they were ranked that year.
Okay, then that doesn't count.
Yeah,
See, then that year. So that's a little bit deceiving, not a lot, but that, those are some of the teams. Notre Dame, Michigan, Nebraska. You mentioned Florida State, A&M. Think about it.
Texas isn't in there?
No, they are.
You know why?
There's been a stretch where they get a lot of preseason because they're always 25th.
Right. They always start off very low, and we know it doesn't take them much to get a bump, right? I mean, they can fall out of the poll 1 week and then go beat like K-State, and then all of a sudden they're 22 again. You know what I mean?
That happened last year, yeah.
So they get a bump, and there's other schools that get that as well, but they always seem to get that little bit of an extra bump to where, yeah, if you're starting off at 24, it's not hard to end at 23 or higher if you're Texas.
I guess sometimes maybe it's just people perceive the uniforms different when you're looking at a team playing poorly. So
Right.
you look better playing poorly in burnt orange than you do in, say, yellow. I don't know.
I'm surprised, though, that Texas would not be a part of this. Now, a lot of it, like 2012 A&M was so much better than anyone could have ever thought.
You're comparing it to the actual rankings. If you compared it to the actual publications and the preseason hype from the same reporters every single year towards Texas, then, yeah, they would be number one in that poll if that's what we were judging rather than top 25 rankings.
And Texas, by the way, would have been right outside the top 10.
And I could tell you,
right inside the top 10.
And I could tell you, if you asked any A&M fan, honestly, save for maybe 10 years in the last 30, the team is disappointing them, is under their expectations. Not probably 100% of the time, but pretty darn close because they have high expectations.
But even Alabama, 50% of the time finishes below. Well, because they're always in the top 3 or 4.
If you're number one to start the year, there's
Ohio
nowhere
State,
to go but down unless
Oklahoma,
you win them all.
65% because they're ranked so high. All right. It's 323 SicEm365 Radio. We will have Gary Don Johnson back in the 70s. He was on that John Tyler State Championship team with Ronnie Lee and Earl Campbell, played at Baylor. He'll join us at 5:20. Randy Galloway at 4. Jackie Sherrill coming up. Jason King today. Also, former Midway star Hunter Jarman, now a minor league scout, will join us at 4:45 on how they're going about their business. Mickey Spagnola at 4:30. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak, and this is SicEm365 Radio. Dr. Kent Petty wants you to be the highest performance man you want to be. Are you sluggish, lack energy? Do you suffer from low sex drive? Petty Clinic Low T offers discounted comprehensive lab work to check on your various levels that can make a difference. It's not only time for you to be the man you want to be with higher energy and stamina and improved sex drive, but also the healthiest and high performance man. Screening for cardiac heart disease risk, EKG, cholesterol panel, blood pressure monitoring, testosterone or growth hormone deficiency, male infertility, hepatitis C, and prostate cancer screening. Petty Clinic Low T offers replacement therapy for testosterone or growth hormones, weight management therapy, and nutritional advice. It's not only time for you to be the man you want to be with higher energy, stamina, and improved sex drive, but the healthiest and highest performance man. PettyClinicLowT.com, PettyClinicLowT.com on Old Hewitt Road, just off Highway 84 in Woodway. PettyClinicLowT.com.
Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like these, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illness and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI. And please, remember to follow CDC guidelines and practice social distancing. Stay home, except for the essentials, and be safe. Together, we'll get through this.
Our communities are facing unprecedented times. At Boozer's Jewelers, we care about you and your family. If you're like me, your home has unwanted or unused jewelry lying around. They can have value, and that means we can turn that jewelry into instant cash. This is a great way to get the most value from your unwanted jewelry. At Boozer's Jewelers, we buy all kinds of unused jewelry. So give us a call and let us give you peace of mind and cash for your unwanted or unused jewelry.
Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physician of Baylor Athletics. Our doctors specialize in the diagnosis and treatment of any and all sports-related injuries, celebrating over a decade of service in Central Texas. Our doctors are equipped to handle a wide range of issues, whether it's your foot or ankle, orthopedic spine care, your hand or wrist, knee and shoulder pain, or if you're in need of our arthritis or total joint clinic. Trust the doctors that Baylor trusts. Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics. Our goal is to get you back in the game.
Y'all listen up. Let me tell you something about group meals from Rudy's Barbecue. It's got all you need for all the folks you gotta feed, smoked meat, sides, and more. There's everything down to the tablecloth, just like the one that you see at the store. And a bridal shower, it's better than flowers. And a long distance meeting, it'll pass the hours. It'll feed all the cousins at a family function. It's better than potluck at a church luncheon. Next time you need to feed 10 or more, call and order a Rudy's group meal.
Next in line.
All right, 100 votes now, 113 votes in, and this is down to the wire, and this is going to go on for 24 hours. SicEm365 Radio. It's on my Twitter feed at David Smoak, and I tagged everybody a part of our staff, a part of at SicEm Radio, SicEm365 Radio at SicEm365. Shocklandwood, 38.1%. Lake has 37.2%. Then Ganaway, 18.6%, who had a spectacular senior year. And then Jay Finley, who had 1,200 yards his senior year in 2010 at 6.2%. And one of the responses, which is kind of what I had told you guys that you might see from Cooper Wade, was from your list, I would say shock until he quit halfway through the season. He had the potential, but I like JaMychal Hasty the best. JaMychal Hasty had about 1,900 yards career rushing. Shock had 4,200.
Well, he says, I liked JaMychal Hasty the best, so that's who he liked. Now, that couldn't be his answer to who the best running back was, because all due respect to JaMychal, and we grew up 45 minutes apart, so I have kind of a fondness for him, but he was not the best running back in Baylor's last decade. He just wasn't. Maybe as a blocker and just as an all-around guy, maybe gets some consideration, but as just a running back, I think you go a lot of different directions. I'll tell you a guy who I think has the potential, but I just don't know if he can ever stay healthy enough, and that's Treston Ebner. I think that's a young man who, if he was healthier last year especially, man, he missed out on a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns that would have been his had he been able to have been more of a part of that offense. But just as we saw, he had a couple carries here and there, and that was kind of all he could do. But eventually towards the end of the year, he started to show a little bit more fire and a little more health, and hopefully next year they have him fully healthy as a senior, because he's a good weapon to have.
We're now being heard coast to coast from L.A. to Georgia and vice versa throughout the state of Texas, and here, of course, in Central Texas, SicEm365 Radio. We're now joined by college football studio analyst and former, of course, very successful college football coach Jackie Sherrill, Paul Catalina, David Smoak, and I'm Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and I'm David Smoak. Coach, thank you very much. Do you think we're going to have a football season sometime in the next perhaps 2 or 3 months?
Of course, I'm very optimistic, and I say yes, whether it's a reduced schedule or if meaning just conference play, but I'm pretty sure we will, because there's no question that the economy has got to get back. The state of Texas, I believe, on the 21st is ruling where you can have elective surgeries. So get the elective issues out of the way. But to answer your question, I think that the only one knows about that would be the government and the scientists.
Coach, this is unprecedented, but did you ever have a time where you had to adapt your off-season schedule to accommodate for something? Is it maybe kind of like stepping in and taking a new job where maybe you don't know what kind of shape the guys are in when you get there?
No. This is something I don't, all during World War II, the stories that they tell, we did not experience. Years later, we will tell stories, and our kids will tell stories that they didn't experience. So I think that, this is something that we're going through that none of us have gone through, certainly the Great Depression or World War II or World War One. So this is something, but I do, either I'm optimistic, but I do think that there's a lot of good things will come out of it. One, it's forcing the FDA to allow and speed up clinical trials to be able to put stuff on the shelf a lot quicker. It is the focal point of all scientists at this time is back in this sector where only a very few scientists ever spent time, because the big pharmas do not spend any time on antibodies or any time on doing vaccines, because unless they can go to market and make $7 billion a year off of that product plus, then they're not going to do the R&D on it. So maybe on one hand, it's forcing all big pharmas to pitch in, and it's also forcing all scientists to zero in to find antibodies and also a vaccine.
That, Coach, and there's so many things to be concerned about right now as far as, when the season